Meeting for March 14th, 2024 is here called to order. First item of business is roll call. Dr. Benoit. Here. Dr. Roberts. Here. Mr. Menard.
Here.
Ms. Marandola.
Here.
And the chair is here. Item number 3, minutes. Review and approval of the December 14th, 2023 meeting minutes. I'll give folks a minute to take a look over those. And if there are no...
Motion to accept the minutes as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4, disclosure. Planning board members shall disclose potential conflicts on matters before the planning board. Does anybody have any matters of conflict this evening? Okay. And then we go into our disclosure and notice. Planning board members shall disclose any ex parte communications about any contested or material adjudicatory facts or opinions concerning the merits of any application before the planning board. Any to hear from? All right, very good then. Item 6, declaration of our voting members this evening. It will be Dr. Benoit, Dr. Roberts, Mr. Menard, Ms. Marandola, and myself. Note that the chair, Gary Pilardi, is absent this evening, as is our second alternate, Ms. Ramos. So then that brings us on to item 7, public hearing of Unified Development Review, American Tower. Applicant American Tower LLC at 51 Industrial Drive, Assessor's Plat 5, Lot 484. And I'll just give that over to Mr. Carullo for a brief introduction and then hand it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is application of American Tower. There's a pre-existing cell site located on the Comstock Tower that is owned by the town of North Smithfield. That tower is undergoing renovations, and one of the issues related to the tower was the way that the cell antennas were attached to the tower. So the town requested that American Tower actually remove its antenna and locate it on a separate tower from this point moving forward. American Tower had agreed to do that. They actually have an existing contract with the town that doesn't require them to do that, so they're doing that in cooperation with the town. This project is coming to the planning board for the first time as a unified development review based on the new laws passed by the General Assembly last year. The planning board today will be sitting as both the zoning board and the planning board in taking 3 separate actions on this application. The first will be for dimensional variances at the request of the applicant. Second is a special use permit, and then the third would be the approval of the land development project. First 2 require a public hearing, so we will be opening a public hearing and taking public testimony. The second is a public meeting. However, if people are here to speak, I wouldn't suggest that the board stifle any public testimony at any point during the hearing.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. My name is Edward Parry. It's P-A-R-E. I'm an attorney at Brown Rudnick, One Financial Center in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here representing American Tower this evening, and as Mark said in his opening, American Tower, I guess, manages the wireless facilities that are on the town water tank. There are 3 carriers located on the town water tank: AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. You need something, or?
Oh, I just need the Wi-Fi password.
Oh.
See the documents.
Yeah, we're going to try to walk through these up on the screen, the plans and so forth. I just sent some of the documents over to the clerk here to load up, so we should be able to see everything I'm talking about on the screen. Everything I'll discuss this evening is submitted as part of our application. As you see, it's a rather thick volume of materials, but back to the water tank. So AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile are all located on the tank. American Tower manages the wireless piece of the water tank. The town approached American Tower about removing the 3 cell carriers from the tank due to some structural issues and refurbishment of the tank. The idea is that we would not be relocating back onto the tank once the tank is finished. So that leaves us with a lot of angry customers who won't have coverage if we were to leave. We have long-term leases on the tank. So American Tower and the three wireless carriers have agreed to take on significant expense and to work to find not only a temporary location, but a permanent location. This evening, I know this is the first unified application, so we can work through those issues. But the first piece of this is to do the temporary installation. And by temporary, I mean we would bring in a truly temporary monopole. There's no foundation. The pole is basically attached to a steel frame. The tower is attached to that frame, and then what we call it's ballast mounted, so it's basically weighted so that it doesn't tip over. So if we can go, so the official address of the property is 51 Industrial Drive. The water tank itself is on Comstock, which is behind Industrial Drive. We are going to seek approval to move those three antennas onto the new monopole at 51 Industrial. Maybe take it down a couple. That's probably decent, that second one there. So as you see at the lower, I'm going to move this so I can see. As you see at the lower end of on the southerly border of the plans, that's Comstock Road. Industrial Drive is up to the north. You'll see the two water tanks. We are located on the water tank on the left-hand side. When I say we, the three carriers are located on the water tank. What we're proposing to do is to put a 145-foot monopole in that square area there. It's actually a rectangle, 30 by 50 lease area, so that we can use the existing access drive to get to the tower. We'll be putting a utility pole to do power and fiber for the carriers. And I apologize for my back to you, but if I can face the plans, it's just a little bit easier for presentation purposes. If we could skip down one. Maybe a couple of the solar butters. Right, that's good for now. So this is Comstock Road along the southerly border again. You'll see the utility pole that we'll be installing. That's our access drive. We will come off the access drive. That square facility is the tower itself, the steel frame that I talked about. And then to accommodate each of the carriers, those three rectangular boxes are where the equipment cabinets would go. Skip down next. So this is the elevation of the tower. It's actually a 145-foot tower, but the steel structural at the base adds a foot to it. So it's a 146-foot tower, and then you'll see there are locations available for Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. We call each of those RAD centers so that each of the carriers will have their antennas up on those brackets on that temporary facility, and we'll be able to broadcast signal. One of the issues was the water tank is at 100 feet, so we've got to be able to be up above the water tank so we can shoot over it and provide substantially the same coverage. Down another. That's just the antenna array. You'll see each of the carriers. Some have 6 antennas, some have 3. Two have 6, one has 3. Next. The bylaw, the ordinance also requires a fence. We put up a 7-foot fence with 1 foot of barbed wire for security purposes. Just for some details, the site's located in the industrial zoning district. We've submitted a letter of authorization from the property owner allowing us to do the temporary facility. We are putting in some green slats into the chain link fence to provide some screening for the equipment. I know there's a condominium project across Comstock. I think many of you are probably here this evening. So at least to provide some screening, but certainly we're not going to be able to screen a 145-foot tower. We've also agreed to post a removal bond. I think it's at about $56,000, and that's in accordance with the ordinance. I have two witnesses, if we want to swear them in. They're here representing the wireless carriers, just to give the board sense of the coverage that we'll be losing if we come off the tank, and how the proposed monopole will substantially replace the coverage. So if we can swear them in, I'll bring
Yeah.
them up, and then they can,
By all means.
I do have their resumes for each, and I'll give one to Mark and one to the board, so you have those.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, okay. Mr. Solicitor, if you would be so kind.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, because you're acting in the capacity of the zoning board, with regard to this application, you must swear in the witnesses. You can just ask them all to raise their hand, and in one fashion, ask them, do they promise to tell the truth before this body tonight? That's simple. You don't have to, swear to God.
Okay,
The whole truth and nothing but the truth before the body.
what he said. So if you'd be so kind to swear before this planning board this evening that you are going to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Martin Lavin, yes.
All right, let the record show that both has said yes.
So Martin, why don't you come up first? So as I said, all the materials that we'll discuss this evening are in your application packets. The two that Martin will discuss are called radio frequency reports. If you could punch up AT&T first. It'll be the first one I send. So just to get Martin qualified as an expert, Martin, could you just give a brief summary of your educational background?
Yes, Bachelor of Science, Electrical Engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic in Troy, New York. 36 years experience with RF engineering, 32 years in this specific aspect of it.
And did you prepare a report on behalf of AT&T? Well, actually, two reports, one on behalf of AT&T and one on behalf of Verizon that were submitted to the board.
Yes, personally prepared the AT&T reports. My manager prepared the Verizon report, and I reviewed it.
And did you also prepare an emissions report that was submitted to the
Yes.
zoning board? With that, Mr. Solicitor or Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Martin be qualified as an expert in the field of radio frequency engineering.
All right, I think,
Unless the board has any questions, I think that's an appropriate
yep,
motion. Yes.
okay. So we're looking for a motion to accept Mr. Levine as a expert. Okay. We have a,
There should be a motion, Mr. Chairman, a second, and then you accept that. If
Okay.
it's a positive vote, if there's no questions of his background or credentials, then you would admit him an expert in that field.
okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Very good, thank you.
Ryan, you want to step up? And again, you have Ryan's resume.
Is that in this,
He represents T-Mobile as the second resume I gave you.
you only gave me one. I want to make sure I say your name right, so.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
Good evening.
So Ryan, again, could you give your educational background to the planning board?
Yes, good evening. My name is Ryan Montedoramos. I graduated as a bachelor's degree in engineering, electronics and communication, major in electronics and communication. And I graduated in Mapua Institute of Technology, that's in Manila, Philippines. I've been in the industry for 27 years, working starting for Singular, Wireless, AT&T, and all the way to T-Mobile.
And in the past, have you appeared before and been qualified as an expert before the North Smithfield Zoning Board of Appeals, Zoning Board of Review?
Yes, I believe it was back when we filed an application for Clearwire, probably 13 years ago.
I'd ask for the same consideration for Mr. De Ramos.
All right. Looking for a motion for Mr. De Ramos to accept him as an expert.
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to do Verizon first, I guess. Can you stop this? That should be good. That's good. So Martin, I'd ask you to explain the existing coverage footprint for Verizon Wireless and what will occur if the water tank or the Verizon facility at the water tank is taken offline.
The first attachment A depicts the current situation with the water tank operational. The green and yellow, the big footprint is the 700 megahertz. That really defines our footprint. That is -95 would be considered to be acceptable coverage. And this shows that the areas that are currently covered with the surrounding sites plus the current site at the water tank. Areas that are in white are below that -95 threshold.
Could you just make sure you're speaking closer to the mic? Yeah, it is
Aye.
So you did this one here? Could you scroll
Yes.
down one?
This plot depicts.
Why don't you give the board and the audience a sense of what the colors mean and give them some reference points on where the sites are located and exactly what you're talking about there with the.
Yeah, this shows the sites are shown for all the existing sites. In this particular plot, it shows the coverage once the water tank site is decommissioned without any other site being built. As you can see, there's a sudden loss of the green and yellow coverage in the middle. So the green is this 700 megahertz coverage, which really defines the coverage footprint. The 2100 megahertz is for capacity, basically. It does not propagate as far as cover as much. But it's layered on top just to show the two of them in terms of coverage and to give an idea of coverage and capacity. So we can see there are sites all around. A little difficult to get the names of them, but they have the orientations of their antennas on there, the name of the site, and the height above the ground level for each one. And as you can see, if you look at that one, you can see that big area of green around the water tank disappears when the water tank is decommissioned. A significant loss of coverage. This shows the situation after the proposed tower would be built, which fills back in nearly all the coverage, basically pretty much as perfectly as you can, reproducing the coverage for the customers. So between once the water tank site comes off the air, the temporary site will be able to fill in the coverage gap created with minimal impact on the customers.
So if in fact the water tank is taken offline for Verizon, there'll be a significant gap in coverage in this area of North
Yes,
Smithfield.
as shown in attachment B.
Can we go to AT&T?
While CJ is pulling that up, I do have a question as far as service goes. Well, when you're coordinating with the town, are you expecting that while you're constructing the temporary monopole, that would be prior to the decommissioning of the water tower, so there's really no interruption?
Yes, the situation depicted in attachment B never actually happens.
Okay.
We call it a hot swap. The new site is completely up and running and ready to go and tested before the other site is turned off and taken down.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification.
I'm going to switch to AT&T.
Yep.
I can't find it. Yeah. No, I can't find it.
It's open in the. Unfortunately, it's open in the browser, which doesn't have all the features to spin them around. The pictures will come up, so. Everything but.
Well, if everybody turns their head, my apologies, I thought I could log in myself when I got here through Zoom, which is what I usually do and use my laptop, but it's just not the case, so. I sent them copies to get, and I'm stalling, I sent them copies of these filings because they weren't uploaded online.
Do you have the viewer?
No, you have available? No. That's all right. We just have to do better reference. Well, I think we can describe whether it's north or south. You'll see the blue dot is the area we're talking about. This is obviously rotated by 90 degrees. So Martin, this is the coverage for AT&T. It'll be similar to Verizon. We don't need to be redundant, but again, if you could give us a perspective, some reference points, and then what occurs if AT&T does leave the tank.
This is the first site which it shows the current condition for AT&T with the water tank site operational. In this case, the two different colors, green and orange, depict what we refer to as ideal coverage and acceptable coverage. The acceptable coverage is in orange, the ideal coverage is in green. It's the NEG 93 dBm, it's only a very slightly different criterion for the minimum acceptable coverage for the two carriers. This is with the water tank site, so the next plot will show, again, the coverage disappearing in that area when the water tank site is decommissioned. Green areas go to areas right around the tank go from ideal coverage to the minimum acceptable, and a lot of areas lose their minimally acceptable coverage. The blue star is the site, proposed site, and the existing sites are shown around it. So this is existing coverage and the coverage from the proposed or the water tank site. And the next slide shows the restoration of coverage in that area with the AT&T facility on the proposed temporary tower. You can see all the green comes back and coverage is restored to as close to the original condition as you can get from the temporary site.
Any questions for Martin? He's not leaving, but any particular questions now? Any questions from you? I'm just going to bring up the T-Mobile. Oh, that's fine. Brian, why don't you come on up? Give me 1 second. Ryan, just come up. I'll have you just testify in general. We're having trouble with the T-Mobile plot maps, but they're going to look strikingly similar to the AT&T and T-Mobile. So, Ryan, if the water tank is decommissioned, will T-Mobile experience a significant gap in coverage without some replacement?
Yes, once the site is decommissioned without any possible replacement, then there'll be a significant loss of coverage for the existing T-Mobile subscribers, not just the mobile subscribers, but also the T-Mobile Wi-Fi at home subscriber that uses our network.
And with your plot maps, if when we do get them, would they be similar to what AT&T and Verizon's report show?
Yes, that's correct.
That's good. Any questions for Ryan? So to cover a few more things, we also in your packet is an emission study. We're required by the FCC to comply with the applicable emissions standards. In this case, with all of the carriers operating, would be at 9.92% of the maximum, so we're well within the FCC parameters. I did receive a couple of emails from through the planning department from abutters wondering about emissions at their particular locations. One was at 190 Providence Pike. Martin, who does the analysis for those, was kind enough to run a projection, and the emissions at that location would be approximately 3.4%, so even a third of the maximum. And there was one on, there was also an inquiry from Black Plain Road, 53 Black Plain Road. So we calculated that, and that came out to 3.8% of the maximum. So even less than the facility is projected. We did look at some, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you're talking about emissions, are you referring to radiation?
Radio frequency emissions, yes.
Martin did the report, and he's the expert on emissions likewise. Was there anything else?
No, I just wanted to make sure I understood what emissions.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would just make sure that all members got the microphone on.
Sure, sure.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm just for the record and the people that are watching.
Yeah, so the question was just in reference to what the emissions head meant by the applicant.
The other thing that we looked at was I did supply a list of some sites that we looked at. We did try to stay on the water tank department location. There's just not enough room. 2 water tanks there, and it's just not practical to try to put a tower, near those tanks with the work that's going to be taking place. So unfortunately, we lost our, relationship with the town from a landlord-tenant perspective, but the owner of the property next door was willing to do it. We also looked at 125 Industrial Drive, much lower elevation, much further away. I believe it's the same gentleman involved in both properties, but that just wouldn't work from a coverage perspective. And lastly, we looked at what looks like a school bus storage area or parking area next door that's, seemed, as a possibility. They were kind of interested in a temporary facility, but were not interested in a permanent. All things being equal, it was a little bit lower in elevation, and we chose the property at 51 Industrial. Now, we needed some variance relief. We also needed a special use permit. I understand this is the first unified application for you, first unified application for me. Statute just passed and went effective in January. So I'm just going to run through, and all of these materials and standards are listed in the letter that I sent. I'm just going to run through the special use standards. I'll do those first, if that's okay, and then I'll run through the variance standards. So for special use permits, they're looking for you to make a written decision, including findings of fact. One, that the ingress and egress to the property and the proposed structures thereon, with particular reference to fire or catastrophe. There is an existing access drive, as I mentioned. We'll be using that off of Comstock Road. There'll be a access drive established to the gate of the compound, but we're very close to Comstock Road, so there'll be no issues with fire, no issues with access. Off-street parking and loading where required, with particular attention to the economic, noise, glare, odor effects of the special use permit on adjoining properties and properties generally in the district. So there's plenty of obviously this, significant parking available. Each of the carriers typically visit the site once a month. We're already doing that at the water tank location. Each of the 3 carriers have to visit there. So that there'll actually be no increase in traffic with this proposed temporary facility. 3, the refuge and service areas with particular reference to items 1 and 2 previous. Temporary facility, we don't generate any refuse. Anything we have as far as trash during construction, we'll make sure it's dealt with and disposed of properly. The utilities, availability and compatibility, as I said, we'll be installing, or National Grid will be installing, a utility pole which will provide overhead power and fiber to the compound for the carrier's use. Screening and buffering with respect to type, dimensions, and character. As I said, we're going to propose to put screen slats in the fence that surrounds the temporary facility. Not much we can do with respect to the 145-foot tower, but we did try to position it. I think there is, significant screening between the condominium project across Comstock over to the property. We do have to get off the water tank. As we mentioned, this is a temporary facility. I know that the planning board or the planning department has suggested putting a time limit of 2 years, which is acceptable to us. It's going to take us a year or two, to fully develop a permanent installation, which we hope will be on this site at a different location. Signage and proposed exterior lighting with reference to glare, traffic safety, economic effect, and compatibility. We don't do any signage. We don't provide any lighting. The tower does not have to be lit. If we visited the site at night for maintenance purposes, obviously we would have lighting for the technician to service the equipment cabinets. You take into account the required yards and open space. I want to deal with those under the variance standard because we did ask for some variance relief. And then the general compatibility with adjacent properties and other properties in the district. We're located in an industrial district. Obviously, the condominium development is across the street. They're dealing with a 100-foot water tank or 2 water tanks at the location. As I said, this is temporary, so it's not going to be a permanent situation. The special use permit does need to be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. So in the industrial zoning district, towers are allowed by special permit under certain circumstances. Sometimes they're allowed by right. As I mentioned in my materials, there's a little bit of an ambiguity as to whether it's by right or special use permit, but because of the height, we do believe it's a special use permit. Benefits to the public is everybody's cell phones and everybody's Wi-Fi. If they're doing wireless Wi-Fi, will continue to work. Obviously, emergency services, emergency communications would be important. Likewise, as I mentioned in the report with respect to AT&T, they provide a service to the FirstNet network, which is the network for first responders. And they would be able to maintain that service also. With respect to the variance standards. Do you want to go through both of them, David?
I would ask you to, if you
Okay.
don't mind, and then we can sort that out, Mr.
At the same
Chairman, as
time?
you see fit.
So typically, it would be the zoning board of review, but in granting a variance, you take the following into consideration, that the hardship that the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure, and not to the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant. So as I mentioned, the sole purpose and reason we're here is to maintain coverage so that the town can refurbish or demolish or whatever they're going to do to the water tank. There is, under federal law, recognized by the courts that a significant gap in coverage under the Telecommunications Act, Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996 is a hardship recognized. So it's a little bit of a twist and a modification to the variance standard. Obviously, you've heard testimony from the 3 carriers that without a replacement site, they will all have significant gaps in coverage. Second standard, that the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. American Tower nor the carriers have done anything with respect to requiring this variance. We are going out of our way to provide the temporary facility. So there's no reason the variance is being caused by something we previously did, something that your zoning board would be very familiar with. That the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. As I said, we are in the we're in the manufacturing, not industrial, zoning district. Most of the properties that surround us are likewise. As I said, there is a condominium project across the street, across Comstock Road. Some folks are definitely going to see the tower. Many folks won't see the tower. As I said, we've tried to screen the equipment at the base to the extent we could. I did take a ride by before coming down this evening. And right now, the equipment is just, in a fence compound at the water district. Frankly, we'll be providing better screening than is provided there as it exists. They're basically, moving the installation over to the adjoining lot so they can continue to provide service. Granting of the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that's denied by the ordinance to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. In the manufacturing district, towers, as I said, are permitted either by special use permit or by right. In this instance, it's special use permit. I expect the permanent location will also require a special use permit and probably some variances. So there's nothing special about what we're doing in this particular district. All of the properties around us, again, with the extent of the residential area, with the condominium development is being zoned residential. In granting we're not getting a use variance. In granting a dimensional variance, the hardship that will be suffered by the owner of the subject property, if it's not granted, will amount to more than a mere convenience, meaning that relief sought is minimal to a reasonable enjoyment of the permitted use to which the property is proposed to be devoted. The fact that a use may be more profitable or that a structure may be more valuable after the relief is granted shall not be grounds for relief. As I said, this is to maintain critical wireless coverage and public safety coverage. It's a use that's allowed by special permit. It's key to the area. Again, we've worked diligently with the town to try to accommodate their needs. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions or to make Martin and Ryan available for any particular questions or questions from the audience. So that's for the special use permit and the variance. And after that's completed, we would be seeking approval of the plan itself as part of development plan review.
Thank you. At this time, I think we're going to open up the public. Oh, by all means.
If I may, have there ever been failures of the monopole?
Dr. Benoit, can you just talk into your microphone? Thank you.
Have there ever been any failures of these monopoles?
Well, they're designed not to fail, so
That wasn't my question. Have there ever been any failures?
I guess I'd ask, how would you define a failure? I mean, when hurricanes come through, they may bend at the top. If you're asking if a failure is from the base, none that I'm aware of.
Okay, so there's no danger it would fall on adjacent property.
That's correct.
That was my, okay,
And we did provide structural reports
all right.
demonstrating that it'll meet the
And-
code.
Do you have FAA clearance? Will there ever be any red lights at the top of this pole?
They will not, and we submitted a report with respect to same, so no lighting's required.
Thank you.
Okay, does the board have any other questions?
Just to expand on Doc's question, so in the event, worst case scenario, this tower were to catastrophically fall down on the ground, the surrounding areas, is it clear enough of 145 feet that it would not damage a structure and or possible an individual?
No, the tower itself will, we can look at the plans to see just how far, but it's not going to be 145 feet away. It's about 90 feet away from Comstock Road. But as I explained, the way the tower is designed is on a big block or a big steel grid with weight on top of it. So it's designed not to tip. Oh, it would
I
have to,
understand it's designed not to tip, but they could have a fracture in the material that is the tower's construction, whether it be a carbon fiber, or it be a steel. There could be a malfunction in that could cause something to topple over. That's my question.
yeah, like any other structure, I guess, it would be my answer to that.
So the answer is.
So it's steel.
But there's not a perimeter of 145 feet around it.
Not to the building that's on the property. I don't know about all the way to the condominiums. We're about 115, 120 feet from the edge of Comstock to the south. So we have about 90 feet coming down, not 90, 60, 80 feet coming down, and then Comstock's about 40. So 120, 125 would be the maximum.
I would think.
That would hit the edge of
Yeah, I would think it
Comstock.
would shear maybe at a point, not from the base, but.
It's going to bend at the top, and that's
Yeah,
what it's designed to do. So if you get, I mean, all of the loading, and that's why if you look, when you say failures, if you get on to Florida, when they go through a hurricane season, the monopoles are going to tip over at the top. That's where the wind sail, that's where the loading is. So all of the antennas, that's where the weight of the structure, that's where the weight of the stress on the pole is going to be. So if you got a high wind, it's going to bend below those antennas, but not topple over
Okay.
from the base.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Thank you. You might have already said this when you were introducing everything, but I just wanted to understand why a temporary structure is being built. I know you said
Yeah.
it's not the permanent structure, but like, what does that process look like?
Permanent?
Well, like, why is it temporary?
Well, the permanent, to do a full design for a permanent tower with a full foundation, we're probably looking at a year or two of development time. We have all sorts of permits to get, including the National Environmental Policy Act. So there's a lot to be done. The idea of the permit is to do something quickly. We don't have to excavate. We bring in the steel, basically put it on the ground, attach the pole to it, put the ballast weights on it so that it satisfies code. So we're not going through a lot of the usual process. It'll take us at least another year to get into development for a permanent, even though we have the property owner's willingness to put it on this property at a different location.
So as part of that question, if it takes years for the permanent one to be built, and did I hear right that this temporary permit request is for 2 years?
Correct. So our game plan is if we get the temporary for 2 years, we start the permanent immediately, and we have to be done within 2 years. We'd like to be longer, obviously, but we understand.
Okay. All right, unless there's any other further questions from the board, I'll make a motion that we open up the public hearing. Have a second? All in favor? Aye. So a couple of rules with the public hearing. Come up to the podium, state your name, your address, and then address your questions to the board, and then we'll make sure that the experts and applicant will address those questions. So the microphone is yours, sir. And if you gentlemen want to just take a break and have a seat. That'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
so it's clear, if anyone's going to testify about information, then they should also be sworn in. If they're just going to ask questions, that's fine. So I
Okay.
don't know if this gentleman plans on,
I got questions.
just questions, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, my name is Frank Lombardo. I live at 170 Providence Pike, Unit 24, in the condominium Plat community, right opposite where the tower's going to go. Mr. Menard, you mentioned something about the drop zone, and I heard something to the effect that there's only going to be 125 before it hits the condominium. My Unit 24 is on the other side of the trees where the road is. So 120 is makes me a little nervous, because if that hits southeast direction when it falls, if it ever falls. Okay, I'm not saying it's going to fall, but if it falls, I may see it in my backyard or I may see it on my porch. So could we get some type of clarification? Right now, it sounds like a guessing game of what that number is going to be. Can you somehow at least lock into what that may be?
Okay. We can't answer for it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lombardo.
Okay, I have another question after that.
Okay. Just rattle them off then.
Okay, the second question should be easier, but in regards to the emissions of the radio waves, can these gentlemen provide information so far as what would it be for those units that are on the other side of Comstock in the Laurelwood community, what they would be facing? We heard that further down, the percentage was lower, which is great. However, we're closer to the tower. So you could provide what that emission rate's going to be, or an idea.
You have other questions?
Oh, no, that's it. Oh, okay, sorry. That's it. That's my two questions.
Trying to get the plan. Well, let me
Okay.
answer the, good? So let me answer the second question first, because that's the easier one. So because the folks who had sent the emails couldn't be here this evening, we had those calculated. But just understand, we're well below the maximum. So whether it's 9% or 6% or 5%, it's nowhere near 100. So the worst case is 9.9, worst case.
Okay, that's good.
That would include yours. So you could very well be less, but you're not going to be more.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have the survey? Is it one of? So I'm looking at the survey, one of three. So the pole itself is 25 feet to the edge of the compound, within 65 feet to the property line, and then Comstock's 40 feet, so 130 feet. But as I said, these are designed not to fail. So the idea that a structure or a light pole or something along the highway is going, or this is going to tip. Remember, we have a 25 by 25 that this monopole is centered on. So you would have to come up onto the foundation and tip over. The monopole is going to fail before that. It's going to bend at the top, as I explained. It's going to be roughly, I don't know how far off Comstock you are, but you're going to be pretty close. So I can only get to the public areas, and that would be 130 to the end of Comstock.
That's what it is.
That's what the survey is.
Well, if anything, I'm just thinking out loud to myself. Could they shore up the bottom where it's secured to the ground like guide wire?
Well, it is shored up with ballast, so it's shored up with weight so that it's built according to code. So the idea is it's designed not to tip over. It may fail, it may bend, but that's what they're supposed to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lombardo. Are there any other further questions from the public this evening?
Excuse me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Dakota. I live at 143 Black Plain Road. I'm the water and sewer superintendent for the town of North Smithfield. And so I'm here to just kind of give you an idea of the challenges we've been facing getting this tank refurbished and why they're rushing. Maybe speak to why they're going after the temporary position for the monopole. So it starts before I actually started here. So it starts back in 2017. The water department every 3 years gets surveyed by the Department of Health, and they noted that the tank has a deficiency in the sanitary survey, right? And so they put the pressure on the town to get somebody out there and make the necessary repairs. So they had some funding issues and challenges. They, you know, the money just wasn't there. It's an expensive project. And, you know, lo and behold, American Rescue Funds come. So when that money came, the town, they, you know, made the decision, like, we need to put this toward that water tower. So to give you an idea of what's going on, and then I'll move up to, let me jump up to 2023. So in 2023, November, I had the tank cleaned and inspected. And so in the way they do that, they send divers into the tank, 4-inch pipes, and then they vacuum out the bottom, the sediment off the bottom. And the amount of paint chips on the bottom were clogging a 4-inch hole. So there's a lot of bare steel in there. And you know, the longer these projects go, the worse it gets, obviously, and much more expensive. So as of right now, they're talking about 1,200 welds in there, filling the pitted areas, and getting in there and getting a new coat of epoxy paint on there to protect the steel, to get it back to, you know, the shape it should be in. I mean, it's public health, it's drinking water, so it's really important. So somewhere in the beginning of 2023, we reached out to American Tower to tell them that we were on track. We were working with our engineers to get this project going, and they started, you know, looking around for alternatives. Now, they're not due to come off the tank until September of '25, so they've really been going the extra mile for us. So the temporary tower, it's an expensive move for them, right? Because obviously moving once onto a permanent tower would definitely be to their benefit. But being the fact that you have to get into these tanks, you have to, it's got to be, it's in New England, weather's not on your side, so we have small windows. So we have fall, spring. Summer we don't do it because we can't take the tank offline in the summer for a high demand period. So it's like every time this gets stepped off, we're going into like a new part of the year, right? So we were hoping to get onto the tank for April 1st. There's just no way that's going to happen. Come summertime, we're not going to take the tank offline. We need that water there. And so all this, everything they're doing is so we can get our crews on site for late September and get this tank back up online before winter comes. So that's why we're here before you. So,
All right. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Are there any other further questions from the public at this time?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I received 2 emails, and I think Attorney Parry did address those, but I did tell the individuals who sent the emails that I would read them into the record on their behalf.
Sure.
The first one is from an Elaine Rose, and it says, per our conversation today, one of my concerns for the proximity of the temporary 146-foot tower from an aesthetics point of view. Our property on Black Plain Road, as you stated, is approximately 1,600 feet from the tower as the crow flies. The value of our property is one of the biggest assets, and a nearby cell tower will not add to the value, in my opinion. We also have environmental concerns in regards to health and safety for humans and wildlife. There are still many questions that remain with the present and future health risks associated with the radiation from nearby cell phone towers. The other email is from Sandra Rochford, and it says, this is Sandy Rochford, 175 Providence Pike. I will not be able to attend the meeting on March 14th. It is stated that the temporary cell tower will be replaced sometime in the future. I would prefer to see specific dates, since sometime in the future is an endless statement. For instance, May 2025, the design plans will be completed. Then the completion of the new site should be no later than May of 2026. Otherwise, this could drag on for years if no time frame is implemented. I read online the distance needed to reduce exposures down to the general public is often around 1/4 of a mile, and you are most likely safe. I would like to see the new site at a minimum of a quarter of a mile or a half a mile away. I feel the timeframes I have provided are more than adequate and generous for them to achieve. What actions will be in place if they don't meet these deadlines? Those are the 2 comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carullo. So with that, then, I would look for a motion to close the public hearing. All right, we have a motion, a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. All right. So, Mr. Carullo and Mr. Solicitor, from here, we're making a series of motions. From my knowledge and the public's knowledge and our board's knowledge, want to run us through those again just one more time?
Well, I'll turn to Mr. Carullo about the specific motions. I would just say to the board that under these circumstances, this is, there are no contradicting positions. So the testimony presented by the applicant and their experts on the points in the special use permit and the dimensional variance sit on the record uncontradicted, supported by expert testimony and/or the testimony of the applicant. So for the board to disregard that testimony, you would have had heard someone come up and contradict them. So so the board really doesn't need to do a lot of, I would follow Mr. Carullo's suggestion in his memo, but the board doesn't need to do a lot of, today, in this application, does not need to go to each and every element. Assuming you find the evidence that presented is credible, you make that finding, and it's uncontradicted, then you can accept it as presented and incorporate it in whatever decision you decide.
Okay.
And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Carullo.
So, Mr. Chairman, the first action of the board would be for the dimensional variances. The planning department has basically presented to the board the categories of relief, a planning comment. If the board is inclined to approve, I think a motion to the effect of, a motion to approve the dimensional variances based on the testimony and plans presented and incorporating the planning department's findings and recommendations would be appropriate. And if you agree with the planning board's recommendations for stipulations, you would also incorporate those.
Okay, very good. So does any of the 4 of you others want to take a stab at the motion as our first go-round as a zoning board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the application for variance based upon the expert testimony presented and the fact that there's no contradiction from the audience or otherwise, and that we incorporate the planning staff's recommendations to approve.
Okay. And Mr. Solicitor, do we need to read those recommendations into the record at this time?
You know, I would do it because I don't think the public's heard it.
Okay.
And I think it's just for clarity.
Yep.
They should know what Mr. Carullo has recommended. Even
Okay.
though it's on the record, it's in your package.
Yep.
And it was on the website, I don't think the people here tonight may have heard it.
Nope, that's fine. So for everyone's information, the planning office recommendations are to grant the requested dimensional variances with the following stipulations. Number 1, the approval shall be contingent upon the granting of a special use permit for the proposed temporary cell tower and planning board approval of the minor land development project. Number 2, that this approval shall be limited to 24 months unless an extension is granted by the authorized permitting authority, which is us. Okay. And that the applicant shall post a bond payable to the town of North Smithfield in the amount of $56,000 to cover the cost of removal and site restoration in compliance with zoning ordinance section 5.6.3.10, paragraph 8. So we have a motion. Do we have?
Second.
We have a second. Roll call vote, please. Dr. Benoit?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Ms. Marandola?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so that's part 1. Now we have the special use permit?
Correct.
Okay. We'll get quicker as
Yeah.
as we go, so thank you,
That's-
everybody, for your patience this evening.
That's correct, Chairman. The next action would be on the special use permit. The motion should be similar, that the motion to be to grant the special use permit based on the plans and testimony submitted on the record, as well as the planning department's findings and recommendation.
Anybody want to make that motion too? All right.
Motion to grant a special use permit based on the testimony and findings of the experts, consistent with the planning office recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion. Those recommendations, again, are, one, the approval shall be contingent upon planning board approval of the minor land development project. Number two, that this approval shall be limited to 24 months unless an extension is granted by the authorized permitting authority. And again, three, that the applicant shall post a bond payable to the town of North Smithfield in the amount of $56,000 to cover the cost of removal and site restoration in compliance with zoning ordinance 5.6.3.10, paragraph 8. So that's a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. Roll call. Dr. Benoit?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Ms. Marindola? And the chair votes yes. So then that moves us on to the minor land development project for development plan review. Item number 8. American Tower LLC at location 51 Industrial Drive, Assessor's Plat 5, Lot 484. You don't have to go through your whole presentation again.
We don't, I hope.
Okay. That's a statement, not a question.
Thank you.
So in this instance, Mr. Carullo, we're looking for our standard approval comprehensive plan.
Yeah, so that's correct, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, the required findings are spelled out. There are 5 of them. Comprehensive plan, compliance with the standards and provisions of zoning ordinance, no significant negative environmental impact, will not result in the creation of lots with such constraints that building on those lots could not be, would be impracticable, in that the proposed development possesses adequate access to a public street. And I think there are 2 stipulations attached to this, that the approval shall be limited to 24 months unless an extension is granted by the planning board, and the requirement for the $56,000 bond to cover removal and restoration.
Okay. Anybody? Bueller? I'll make that motion to accept the minor land development project at 51 Industrial Drive, Assessor's Plat 5, Lot 484, finding it to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and additionally the planning office findings, and also with the recommendations of the planning board for the 24 months and the bond that's called out. So that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second. Roll call. Dr. Benoit?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Ms. Marindola?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, have a good evening.
You
Thank
too. We'll see you before 2 years are up.
You will.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda this evening is a public meeting for the amendment to the town zoning map. The applicant is High Rocks 2 LLC, Assessor's Plat 3, Lots 2A. The applicant is requesting a zone change from manufacturing M to residential urban for the purpose of constructing a 4-unit residential building while requesting dimensional relief to exceed the maximum density on a lot with less than the required frontage, less than the required side yard setbacks, and less than the required driveway width. I feel like I stole your thunder just reading that off for you.
Mr. Chairman, this application is for a 4-unit, well, you did, 4-unit residential condominium adjacent to High Rocks on a currently vacant lot. I think some years ago, this site was actually approved for a 14-unit multifamily. Today, the proposal is for a 4-unit multifamily. Really would be no adverse effect on the surrounding area, but I'll let the attorney make his presentation.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Charles Redahan. I'm an attorney licensed in the state of Rhode Island. I practice with Kiernan, Plunkett, and Redahan, located in Providence, Rhode Island. This evening, I'm representing the applicant, High Rocks 2 LLC, who's the owner of a parcel of land located at 1 Tupperware Drive, obviously in the town of North Smithfield, and more specifically described as Assessor's Plat 3, Lot 2A. The applicant is before you this evening seeking master plan approval and a favorable recommendation for a zone change, more specifically an amendment to the ordinance for the town of North Smithfield to amend the zoning designation of the property from manufacturing to residential urban. The applicant is seeking to construct a 4-unit development on the property. Just by way of a brief background on the subject property, it's currently a vacant lot. It abuts the High Rocks condominium development and consists of approximately 40,000 square feet of total land area. In 2009, it housed a 2-story structure, which was subsequently demolished. As Mr. Carullo alluded to, in 2019, it was approved by the planning board to have a 14-unit affordable housing structure constructed on that property. Obviously, that did not go forward. We're here today to seek the approval as outlined, as well as dimensional relief in regards to maximum lot density for bedrooms. Each unit will have 3 bedrooms. The residential urban minimum for lot frontage, as well as the residential urban minimum requirement for lot width. I have with me this evening Mr. Ed Pimentel. Mr. Pimentel prepared a complimentary report that accompanied this application regarding the development of Lot 2A for these 4 residential units. And Mr. Pimentel will speak regarding the contents of that report, more specifically the proposed development's consistency with both the comprehensive plan and the future land use map, as well as the benefits to be realized by the town of North Smithfield with this proposed development. So if I could request that Mr. Pimentel be sworn in.
For this instance, because we're just looking for a recommendation to town council to change the zoning map, do we need to swear in expert testimony this evening?
We don't need to do that.
Okay.
But you certainly would want to accept Mr. Pimentel's background.
Okay.
And I assume he's got a good resume.
It was submitted as part of the package.
I do believe we submitted it as part of the package originally. Mr. Pimentel, if you could speak to your educational background and professional qualifications.
Sure. I have first of all, Edward Pimentel for the record. I have both a bachelor's and a master's in urban planning from the University of Rhode Island. I've been an urban planner for 35 years, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Florida. I've testified in all 39 cities and towns in Rhode Island, all the superior courts throughout southeastern Massachusetts. I've also been a continuous municipal planner during those 35 years for several communities in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts. I have my own consulting company, and I also am a planner for the city of East Providence concurrently. And I've written numerous reports, comprehensive plans, zoning ordinance amendments. So I'll be speaking to the comprehensive.
Mr. Pimentel, you've appeared before this board previously also, is that correct?
I have been before this board. In fact, it wasn't too long ago on a solar project. I think it was last year, actually.
Okay. So do we need to make a motion to accept him as accept Mr. Pimentel's resume?
That's discretionary. I would do that. I'd accept his resume and his credentials unless there's an objection.
All right. I'll make a motion to accept Mr. Pimentel's resume and credentials. Have a second? Roll call vote. All in favor? Aye. All right.
So for the board's edification, seeking a zone change is rather normal practice. What's rather abnormal is typically when we're seeking a zone change is we're finding some unique characteristics that changed in regards to the property or neighborhood, and therefore we're trying to also quantify the appropriateness of the zone change and amending the future land use map given just historical changes in property. What was unique about this, when they asked my guidance, before I even got involved in the project, they said, first and foremost, let me see what the future land use map, because by law, the future land use map lays out the vision for a community. And in fact, to really quantify that, as of this past legislative cycle in the next couple of months, it will now be the law of all 39 cities and towns that all local decision-making processes have to be in accordance with their future land use map. That's just the way the law is going to be. So I said, let me take a look at that, because that's going to give me some guidance as to the appropriateness of the zone change. What was most unique is that the future land use map says this property is supposed to be high-density urban residential development and not industrial. This is not unusual. Most communities, when they prepare their zoning map, they typically will also impose a zoning designation based on historical usage of property. The adjoining property was a former mill site. Now it's a mixed use with residential and commercial and so forth. But it was historically used for a mill purpose, industrial purposes, and at some point too, this lot was an adjoining a lot that probably accompanied it, and they figured it's been used industrially, let's zone it industrially. So that way we don't render it non-conforming. That is very typical. Obviously, this community doesn't want to see that continue. So you've imposed in your future land use map a high-density land use classification. What does that mean? That means the expectations is that these properties will then, in the future, develop in such a manner. Obviously, High Rocks is going into a mixed use already. This lot remained fallow, appropriate for high-density residential. In support of that, because I read every one of your elements in support of that, the town of North Smithfield has very little acreage dedicated to high-density residential. In fact, 61% of this community is zoned low density of all the acres. And for obvious reasons. A, you lack the infrastructure. There's very limited sewer and water. And so therefore, B, if you are going to develop residentially, the density has to be low due to the lack of infrastructure. Few areas have the infrastructure. That's why they're classified in this manner. Once I concluded that, I felt very confident that this should be developed in a residential manner. Density comes into play next. So we are limited into the density of the units we can seek. Obviously, an acre of land that has the infrastructure could accommodate a greater density, but we also are trying to realize as few of the variances as possible, obviously being now done through the unified development process. And that's why we only pursued 4 units, not the great density that was previously approved at 14 units. So based on that, I felt very confident that the board could issue a positive recommendation for a zone change. If you actually look at Rhode Island general law, it says that it's incumbent upon a municipality to render its zoning map consistent with its comprehensive plan, but it's very commonplace for a community to allow a private property owner to bring that action forward when it's ready to do a development of that property. So many communities do leave it up to the property owner to pursue those actions. A zone change will realize consistency with the comprehensive plan. The current zoning does not. I did get into the findings, even though we're only at the master plan stage, and I understand that, I still address the standards for the granting of the land development, just because I wasn't sure how this community handled it. Some do handle it master plan. Some wait for the zone change, handle it preliminary. It starts on page 9 of 10. It concludes at 10 of 10. I also noted the variances that are required. The majority of these variances result from a lot that's a pre-existing lot of record. We can't create more frontage, we can't create more width, but yet we are entitled to develop this in a manner that's consistent with your comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan states, and I quote, that this area is an urban residential area, has the necessary infrastructure, and therefore it is appropriate for multifamily dwellings. That is the definition of what the urban residential is, and that is what this property is classified. I don't know if the board has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions?
Are these units going to qualify for LMI?
No, these are going to be for market rate units.
Does the new unified development process allow 5 units per acre? Is that if it's all LMI?
So the new statute regarding the low and moderate income, which falls under the comprehensive permit, if that's what you're asking, Dr. Benoit. So under the new comprehensive permit regulatory language, there are base density requirements that are mandated, so they're mandatory already. And the reason why those were established is because many communities, every time somebody brought forth a comm permit to those communities which have not complied with the 10% statutory requirement, there was always the counter argument that it didn't reflect the current zoning. So it was a wide separation from what the zoning allowed density-wise versus. So the state said, we need housing in general. We also need affordable housing. They said, we're going to establish base requirements. So to answer your question, if this had been a comm permit, and with the infrastructure being in place, this is an acre of land, it would be, starting off density, a base requirement of 5 units. So it would be 4 market rate and 1 affordable, mandatory, automatic, because we meet the acre, we have the infrastructure, we would be entitled to that. But once again, we're balancing the density of this property. That's why we didn't pursue a comm permit. If we had pursued a comm permit, and like I said, we're not asking for the 14 units that had been previously approved. If we had pursued a comm permit, that is a base density, so then it escalates from that.
Thank you.
My question builds on what Doc was just asking. I don't think I heard you answer this. Is there a reason, so my interest in asking this question is because of the lack of affordable housing and the inability for like a lot of average working families to not be able to afford to live in a community like North Smithfield. Is there a reason why you, I heard you talk about density, but then I heard you say before it was approved for 14 units, and then you said this proposal is market rate. And I'm just wondering, is there a reason why you're not having a design that would include low to moderate income to provide more affordable housing? I don't feel like I understood if you answered that.
We didn't seek a greater density, given the fact that it is an acre parcel. Greater density means more massing and scale, needs more parking. It just takes a whole different design and criteria. We felt that that may not be so appropriate for this property, the density that would be, we could pursue and be permitted under the a comm permit. So our desire was to minimize the density. 4 units is an appropriate density for this property, but I don't know. The answer is if the community wants affordable, they're going to have to give much greater density on this property to accommodate, which could be done under the comm permit, but that's not something we were pursuing.
Just very briefly, I believe on top of that, in our discussions with the planning department, then just the number of units did not trigger the affordable housing requirement, so it's just not something that we pursued, being only 4 units.
I mean, if the question is it mandatory? It's not mandatory under the 4 units.
It's not about whether it's mandatory. Okay. I was wondering whether there was like an interest or a will based on the design to have it be, to have like a consideration for affordable or low moderate because of the housing crisis.
Understood. Sure.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. As a reminder, we aren't reviewing master plan at this time. We're not reviewing any, proposals. We're only reviewing the recommendation to council for an amendment to the town zoning map. But I will make a motion to open it up to the public for a public hearing, if there's anyone that would like to speak. So I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Same rules as last time. When you come up, state your name, address, and address your comments and questions to the board, and we'll do our best to get them answered for you.
So my name's Mike DeBroyce. I am a resident of 1 Tupperware Drive. I live in Unit 103. I also here representing the community of High Rocks, the sub-association. We have 3 associations on our property. We have a master association that handles everything outside the building, the 55 acres that we own. We have a commercial sub-association, and we have a residential sub-association. So as the master, I'm the president, and as the residential, I am one of the vice presidents. So I represent 128 homeowners at this complex. And I just don't know for a fact, and I'll ask through the chair, it's been referenced that 2019 that there was a larger development proposed on here. Well, it was mentioned at that time, I believe that is expired. There was no permits and no request to extend that. So I know it's been mentioned a couple of times, but that does not exist anymore. And I'll leave that as a question because I don't know for sure. I know that I can't communicate through, only communicating through the chair, so I'll give you some of the questions that we had. We had some of this back in 2019. We still have some of this now. And this is from the community and also the board when we had met. The property is, it is 39,000 square feet, but it is a very small area up on the top of a plateau. And if you've been over to our community, that area drops down considerably down towards the river that feeds into a hydro plant. So the footprint of where the building sits basically takes up almost all the green space for any community that would be residing there. So our community has questions as far as how does that community overlap into ours. We already have a massive trespassing issue. We have nonstop illegal dumping from the town of Blackstone. And again, if you know this, if you know High Rocks, even though we're part of North Smithfield, we live by ourselves on an island. You have to go through Massachusetts to get to us. We have Massachusetts water, we have Massachusetts sewer, but we do have town trash. Thank you to the town for that. So when we look at the 4 units, which is a lot better than 19 or whatever was approved at that time, there's still an issue of these are 3 bedrooms. As soon as you start going into that, you start looking at children playing there. Where are they going to be playing? Are they coming onto the property of High Rocks? Is it going to be a dog-friendly community? We have issues already with other residents coming onto our community. We've had to get dog officers there. We've had residents attacked by neighbors' dogs. These are things that now there's a community, when you live in an HOA, that you have to look at. Our property has its own fire protection. The town of Blackstone does not provide that. We have a bladder in the back that is maintained. I forgot how many thousands and thousands of gallons that are in there. So I don't know how this facility would get it if they plan that North Smithfield or Blackstone, whoever responds first, would be hooking up to one of our hydrants and drawing off of our bladder. That I find that would be a little bit tough to do. When you look at the map on this, the access for our property goes through Lot 2A, and I know the original developers, Blackstone Smithfield Corporation, then went to real estate coordinators and now to HR2. We've continued the use of access in our property, not just for our tenants, but also for the commercial sub-association, which High Rocks 2 is the owner of that. So I don't know how the easements on there, I read through, there's a lot of documents online. I did take the time to read through everything. And I saw on one of them, and not knowing everything that was written on there, it said something about that there's an agreement already for the association, meaning High Rocks, to maintain that roadway. As far as I know, there is none. I've asked my fellow board members if they've ever seen one. We have not, so I don't know where that comes from. So there's a shared easement to come into our property on Lot 2A, and I know that the developer would have to address this. We have our water line that comes in from the town. We have gas lines that come in from Liberty Gas, and we have a storm drain line, and that the storm drain is shown onto that property. So the entranceway of High Rocks is also the continuation of Butler Street from the town of Blackstone. And while it's not a town street, the roadway is of considerable width that would look like it's a town street, and then when you get into Blackstone, it narrows down. It almost makes it one way for people coming in and out of our complex. Right now, because I don't know, errors when this property was designed, there's no visitor parking. So we have 128 of our units. the developer has their own commercial, and then they have 5 of their own residential units. So there's no visitor parking. So routinely, and you can go out there any day of the week, there's a number of vehicles that are parked along that side of the Butler Street extension, which is part of Lot 2A. So we have residents that are concerned, like, okay, now where do we park? Some of them have extra cars, and that, you know, I feel that that's their own problem, but where do visitors park? So what's going to happen with that access coming in and those people from our development that use that? Just going through some of my notes here. When we were talking, when the attorney was talking about changing the zoning on this, I was looking at the zoning. It was very hard to find the new stuff online. I know the town just changed their website, and I called the building department. They were very helpful in trying to direct me to everything. I didn't understand why it was going from its present zone to a residential urban and not residential suburban, but I just heard the testimony. I haven't seen that information from the other gentleman that was up here talking about that, so I didn't understand why it was going to urban and not suburban. Just bear with me a little bit, because there was a lot of stuff that we looked at this on here, and I just want to make sure that I've got everything on here. I did hear that this still has to go to the town council, so I know that we'll have the opportunity to speak in front of the council on this also. One of the questions that came up when we were looking at the application, it looked like this application was still dated from 2021, and I thought there was some changes in the ownership on there, and again, this is a question. I don't know for sure that it's 2024. I don't know with the 3 years. I thought some of the ownership of HR2, High Rocks 2, had changed, and that's not stated as such. And if I'm wrong on that, I do apologize. I'm just asking the question. And I know that, so the developer is asking for it to change the zone, and then if they were approved to change the zone, then they're going to be asking for variances. So it's interesting to ask for a change of a zone and then have to ask for, now that you got that zone, now ask variance for that zone. So it's almost like you cause your own hardship. And I know when you read through the regulations and you look at the different hardships that you have to prove that it's not in, that I question that when they talk about section 9.3.1, that subsections B, C, and D, I feel that do not apply for this to be approved. And I know that this is just a recommendation, again, going to the town council. We also have units on that side of the building that face Lot 2A, and we have unit owners that have asked about the aesthetics that they look out. So, and I know everybody has the right to build on their land. We also have the right to enjoy our land, and they bought units and they look out their windows and they see nice greenery, and now eventually there'll be something built there one day. They have questions concerning the mechanicals. Where are those going to be? I'm going to be looking outside. I'm paraphrasing for our unit owners. Going to be looking outside my window. Am I looking at an HVAC unit now? Am I looking at into their windows? So this stuff like that the unit owners on that side of the building do have questions on. When looking at the plans and then looking at some of the subdivision or the zoning requirements on parking, I believe this shows it has garage parking and also has the driveway leading up to them, which looks like it's got front yard parking. And I believe I saw in the zoning code that's got to be side yard or rear, and that's a question, not a statement. So I'm just questioning that. So those were the questions that I had. I know I've got some other unit owners that are here tonight that might want to come up and speak, but again, these are questions that we had in 2019. It's the developer does sit on the master board, and we do have a good working relationship. And we talked before coming in here. It's not personal. He's got an investment. We have an investment in our houses, and we are, our houses are condos, but we're 128 property owners that do have concerns as to what we're looking at, how the aesthetics going to be on this building when we come in, where are those kids going to play, and when you say 3 bedrooms, there are going to be kids moving in there. So those are some of the concerns that the association has, and I thank the board for their time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other folks from the public that would like to get up and speak?
Yes. So I wrote a little speech. I hope that's okay. So my name is Casey Kajula. Can you hear me? Speak loud enough. So Casey Kajula. I live at High Rocks Community. I'm Unit 244. Been here since 2019. I actually live one of the units that we were talking about. That parking lot. So I overlook it. I have a deck that overlooks it as well. So just so I don't mess it up, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of our community, respected decision makers, I stand before you today to express my strong opposition to this proposed condominium development or this zoning change. While I understand the need for progress and growth, we must also consider the impact on our existing community. And I lost my speech, so I'll find it. Don't you guys worry one little bit. Oh, I just deleted it. Just 1 second as I locate it. God, my nerves made me delete it. That's so frustrating. Let me just go to junk real quick. Deleted items. Well, that's frustrating. There we go. All right, back to it. While I understand we need for progress and growth, we must also consider the impact on the community members as well as the environment. So let me address my concerns. I have 4 of them, which we can constitute as questions as well. So density and parking issues, which have been brought up a few times. Our community already faces density challenges, and parking is a real issue. Adding more units isn't going to help this issue at all, going to further exacerbate it. We don't need further strain on our infrastructure. I know there's been approvals in the past, but things have changed. The convenience and quality of life for our residents should not be sacrificed for the sake of additional construction. 2, environmental concerns. Yes, there has been approvals in the past, but we get our water from Blackstone. Blackstone has expressed concerns that they're already overpumping for the units, not even just the units, just the dwellings across the community. So I'm not sure how we're going to address that. Our limited land cannot sustain a concrete jungle. We must protect our natural resources, preserve the delicate balance of our ecosystem. Building more structures without proper consideration for environment impact is short-sighted and detrimental to our collective future. Number 3 is a kind of a direct point to High Rocks 2. So unfortunately, I've been here for a few years, and the tactics that High Rocks 2 has used to get their approvals or get our community members to approve this has been bullying, intimidating, and like giving us a lot of pressure, and I'll explain why. So I personally received a letter from not these individuals, not this attorney, but Ryan Hurley, to basically threaten me from being able to sell my unit if I don't comply with their demands. Seems to be a little bit against the spirit of a community cooperation, and we were forced to hire legal counsel to contest this. So that was a big concern with me. I'm not sure if I'm gonna get a letter in 6 months from you letting me know, hey, I can't sell my place because of this, which is frustrating to me. Lastly is like just the quality of life. I look out there, I see that place. That's where I live. That's my view. I really don't want to, have any concerns of lowering the value of my place. This is my investment. I'm not a wealthy man, so I need this place to survive. So I'm hoping this is not going to reduce the value of it. I work from home. There's going to be extensive construction in order to complete this. That's going to impact me severely, and I'm not sure what that's going to be. And then just overall, just reducing the cost of my home. So that's my big concern. Those 4 items is really, hey, we have density concerns as it is today. There's environmental issues that communities have already brought up just for existing dwellings. We've had bully-like tactics and intimidation from this group before, and also just like the home values. So in conclusion, I urge you all to consider the long-term effects of this proposal. Let us prioritize the needs and rights of the residents and the community members over corporate interest. Together, we can build sustainable and harmonious community, one that values its people, protects our natural beauty. Thank you for your attention, and let us make all decisions and benefit us all. I apologize for my nervousness and my cracking my voice, but thank you all.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity here to speak. My name's Timothy McDaniel. I recently moved to High Rocks. I'm in Unit 330. Policy and procedure, I'm probably going to ask you something about, and this might not be the time or the place for other questions that I might have. As far as the applicants go, at this point, they're seeking a variance. Is that correct?
Right now, they're looking for a positive recommendation to the town council for the zone change.
So it wouldn't be the variance, aside from manufacturing to residential, would it also be the proper time to address dimensional variances also, or just?
You can certainly speak to that tonight, but
Sure.
we won't be addressing that at this meeting.
Thank you. I just found out about this yesterday, and naturally it's kind of, I guess once it's out of the petitioner's hands and saying I never got it, the postal services could get leaned on in that aspect. So what what I'd like to ask is, I didn't have much time to do much research, but what I did do was, I had just a couple of minutes to find something, and I would ask through the board, of course, the petitioner, if this would be a situation where they are going to profit from this. The reason I'm asking this is, and it's, I found it under a dimensional variance, it's under the ecode360.com, I found it. It's on, it's 340-8.2, and it's under the dimensional variance, B subparagraph, with regards to how it can be granted, the dimensional variances, and it says, the last line basically says, however, the fact that a use may be more profitable or that a structure may be more valuable after the relief is granted shall not be grounds for relief. So I guess maybe the way I read it is, if they're going to profit from it, there could be a point where a variance on the dimensional aspects that they're going to need to seek the offsets, property line and everything, where it's specifically stated in the document I'm reading. I don't know how old it is. It could have been something that's overridden, no longer in, but it seems as though the town of North Smithfield is specifically stating that dimensional variance will not be granted when there is a possibility of a profit by the petitioning party. So I wanted to bring that forward. Like I said, I'm not really sure about the proceedings. I've just moved up here, love where I live, and not to diminish the previous speakers to me who seem much more up on this. It's the only thing I could find, but like there's a lot of red tape, not a red tape, but just a lot of places you can go to online and just various sources of information. Literally spend hours and hours or days and days in front of it, looking for something that, what's going to help me here, keep that land just vacant, green, and an open space. This is all I found, and I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention. I'm sure they're well aware of all of these statutes that are in place, but it's just one that caught my eye. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I love it here. I just moved from somewhere. I love North Smithfield.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we'll be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
All right, we have a motion, a second?
Second.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So just to make sure we're clear what we're here for tonight, because we're bifurcating, obviously, the development and the relief from this development or any development. We're asking for a zone change. As a matter of law, your present industrial classification is 100% in error. It's inconsistent with your comprehensive plan. I don't think anybody would want to support industrial development of this property anyway, which we could do by right because of the current zoning. We wouldn't be able to do right in a couple of months because your future land use map will guide all decision-making processes. So what we're doing is we're actually bringing the community into consistency with your own comprehensive plan. That's what the law is, and that's what you've directed us to pursue, is an urban. There's different densities of residential. This property is classified for urban residential. It isn't for suburban, and it's in my report. We don't need to address this today. We're not going beyond right, this aspect, but just for clarification to the gentleman, as of January 1st, too, the burdens have changed. So the standards for the granting relief have changed. There used to be a standard for financial gain. That standard has been extinguished. There's no need to even concern yourself with financial gain because that doesn't tie in anymore with relief as of January 1st. Those are the new standards, just like lease relief has been extinguished. And your own solicitor can tell you that that's a correct statement, but I know we're not there for this tonight. It was just for clarification.
No, thank you for that.
Just very briefly from me, perhaps 1 or 2 points I could maybe assuage some of the concerns. Included in the planning office's recommendation is our stipulations, number 4, or number 5, excuse me, that the applicant shall provide an excavation and construction plan which may be combined with the soil and sediment control plan designed to mitigate the impact of construction on the abutting property, which shall include but not be limited to construction access, best practices for dust control, vibration, and hours of operation. So that is a stipulation of the as part of the planning office's recommendation. So I do think that should be considered. As far as the sewer and water issue with the town of Blackstone, the applicant's predecessor in interest went to Worcester County Superior Court in 2008. They got a favorable judgment compelling the town of Blackstone to provide this sewer and water. Included in our submission as part of the application was a 2019 letter from the solicitor from the town of Blackstone, again affirming that they would provide sewer and water to what was going to be that 14-unit development. So I really don't see that's a non-issue that has been litigated, in the Superior Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I certainly understand the concerns, but I do feel as though we stand on rock solid legal foundation for pursuing that. And if there's any other concerns, as Mr. Pimentel alluded to, I know we won't address the majority of them tonight, but going forward,
Sure.
I'd certainly be happy to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carullo, you outline a series of stipulations in this. Would these stipulations be applicable for tonight's recommendation to town council, or?
Mr. Chairman, if you're making a recommendation to the town council, you do have the opportunity to also recommend to the council that they attach stipulations, conditions to any zone change as is authorized by statute. So what I normally do is I'm actually looking ahead.
Sure.
So when a project comes in, we looked at the site plan, we had a conversation with the applicant, let them know about the dimensional relief that was going to be necessary moving forward. We had them do a traffic study, which wasn't part of the presentation here tonight, but it was a concern based on, the conditions in the area and access to the property. And we look at it as if it was the master plan submission. And so those conditions would be conditions that I would recommend for a master plan, as well as forwarded to the council. If they see fit to attach those as part of a zone change, it would be their prerogative. I would suggest that you do, however.
No, thank you for that clarification. Reading through these stipulations, I would also, in hearing the concerns of the folks from the adjacent condos, that we look to see architectural plans, elevations, and renderings from that perspective to see what they would be looking at. So if that could be provided, as well as, I'll say that stipulation number 8, architectural plans and renderings. Does the board have any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns?
I just have a clarifying question. What is the zoning of the parcel that High Rocks is currently located on?
Well, people, it's manufacturing, but the planning consultant can answer that.
The property, much like this property, is not only classified in industrial, but it too is inconsistent because the future land use map anticipates that this property be rezoned to an urban residential, although right now it's zoned in an industrial manner. But it's also likewise inconsistent with your future land use map.
Okay. Are these in color on our PDFs that we got? Okay. 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 Anything else from this board? So then we would be looking for a motion this evening.
I'll make a motion to send a positive recommendation to the town council for the requested zone change, along with the stipulations that Mr. Porter can read into the motion.
Okay. So those stipulations are that the applicant shall receive a zone change from the town council to allow for the construction of a 4-unit multifamily residential building with less than the required area, less than the required frontage, and less than the required side yard setbacks prior to preliminary approval. That the applicant shall receive town water and town sewer approval from the town of Blackstone, Massachusetts prior to preliminary approval. That the applicant shall comply with all Rhode Island DEM requirements for the development of the site, including but not limited to wetlands approval, environmental land use restriction, soil management plan, and a UIC RIPD's permit for drainage. Number 4, that a soil and sediment control plan shall be required at preliminary approval in conformance with zoning section 18, soil erosion and sediment control and stormwater pollution prevention plan. 5, that the applicant shall provide an excavation/construction plan which may be combined with the soil and sediment control plan designed to mitigate the impact of the construction on the abutting property, which shall include but not be limited to construction access, best practices for dust control and vibration in hours of operation. Number 6, that a landscape plan designed by a Rhode Island registered landscape architect shall be required prior to preliminary approval. That the proposed development, number 7, that the proposed development shall not receive any town of North Smithfield trash hauling services, snow plowing, roadway maintenance, drainage maintenance, or other similar services, and said stipulation shall be included on all site plans within the deeds to the property and within the condominium declaration documents. And 8, that architectural plans and renderings are required prior to preliminary approval. So that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, second. Roll call vote. Dr. Benoit?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Ms. Marandola? And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Give everybody a second to clear out, because now we get to the good stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, I know.
But then when I saw that we were giving all these other
Yeah.
I'm just kind of checking right now.
You know, they could always come back and say, hey, you know, we realize that we got 4, we'd like to increase that.
Yeah.
So that could be the, yeah, we do. Yeah. Okay. So now we are on to item 10, public meeting, review of capital improvements program, CIP budget requests. The North Smithfield Charter, Article 7, is that 7 or 12? I'm terrible with Roman numerals. Anyways, the article, Planning Board, Section 2, 3, capital budget reads, the Planning Board shall review and comment to the Asset Management Commission in regard to the capital budget for the following year in a comprehensive 6-year capital improvement program on an annual basis. So, Mr. Carullo and Mr. Solicitor, before we begin, because we're making comments to the Asset Management Commission, I looked. Minutes haven't been posted for the Asset Management Commission since 2021. Is our Asset Management Commission somewhat defunct? Or is there just not enough members for a quorum? Because if so, who are we passing these comments along to after this evening?
The wrong file.
So, Chairman, I don't know the answer to your question with regard to the status of the Asset Management Commission. I do know that they met, I met with them, it was over a year ago.
Okay.
I'm not sure that they've met since that time or are currently meeting. Whatever the board recommends this evening will be forwarded. Actually, I'll be dropping it off to the Finance Department tomorrow.
Okay.
As well as the Town Administrator, so it'll be taken into consideration as they create their budget moving forward,
Okay.
as well as running that before the Budget Review Committee for the final budgets that would be submitted to the Town Council. I do know that the majority, if not all, of the department directors have already appeared before the Budget Review Committee and made their presentations to that committee. But this will be going to the Finance Department and the Town Administrator tomorrow, and they will be taking it under consideration for
Okay.
their final submission to the Council and the Budget Review Committee.
All right, because as you can see, I got a lot of red on here. So I just want to make sure that our comments aren't in vain for this evening. You know.
If you give me a copy of whatever comments you write down, I'll be writing them down, but I'll be able to incorporate those first thing in the morning. That's what I intend to do.
All right, great. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
suggest we take those members who are present first before we go through
We sure can.
the other 100 items?
We sure can.
Thank you.
Did you guys draw straws?
I think Heritage Association has a smaller line item than the fire department. They're gonna get out of here quick.
So, excuse me, the Police Department is here also.
Yep, police is here as well. He has, Mr. Keene has some connections with the planning board, so as a former planning board member.
Former connection. So Rich Keene, I live at 7 Bamford Street, and I'm the president of the North Smithfield, currently at North Smithfield Heritage Association. And one of our jobs is to preserve the buildings within the town's historic districts. Currently, we are working on grant applications to restore the upstairs at the former town hall, the Memorial Town Building, which is part of the Slatersville Historic District, as well as the National Registry of Historic Places. So we'll find out probably in May or June whether we get any grant money. Typically, what we do is we ask the town to support in some fashion financially these restoration projects, because the foundations like to see that. They like to see that the town and the community has some skin in the game. Currently, the estimates for the work up there is probably about $150,000, which is why you see our request for this year or this coming year is $25,000, and we've asked for, I believe, $25,000 for the next, as part of our 6-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we get grants, then of course that, if we get enough grant money, that will go away. So, and we've been pretty good. Beth Farrisee is our grant writer. She does a phenomenal job with it. We've, with our past projects next door at the old Grange building and at the Forestdale School, we've gotten a tremendous amount of grant money to do those projects. So we're hopeful that our history will continue and we'll be able to do that. So we're asking for $25,000 to get started on the restoration up there. Most of that money, by the way, is to replace the windows with just like the ones you see behind you here. These would replicate most closely the original windows that were in the building. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Will that cover your $1 lease for the year of the building?
Well,
Does the board have any questions?
I just have a
Mr.
point
Keating?
of clarification.
Sure.
The document I'm looking at in the packet appears to be dated wrong, incorrectly.
Dated wrong?
It's referencing, well, the date at the top of the memo is February 4th, 2023. The title of the file is 2024-2025 capital budget, but then throughout the document, it's referencing fiscal year 2023-2024. I believe that should be fiscal year 2024-2025. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Thank you. So I don't know
Thanks for catching that.
if we can just comment that I don't know how that works, but
We're asking for $25,000.
just noting that that the dates are backdated.
Thank you for catching that.
Okay.
I use an old file when I use last year's file.
I copy and paste all day long, Rich. No,
I'll take the hit on that.
Mr. Keene, I do have one question for you. I was looking at last year's budget, and you had the Forestdale Schoolhouse cupola budgeted for this year. Is there a reason why? I'm just trying to understand why there's the reason why you're going from one to now putting the cupola over to 2027, 2028.
It's a great question.
Because I know you've been focusing a lot of your efforts to get that, to
Right.
knock that off, but then
Right.
the Memorial Town Hall came online for you folks, so I'm going to guess that there was some shifting priorities there.
There is. We were able, on this final portion of the work at the school, we were able to build the base for the cupola.
Okay.
With the money the grant money that we received. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough money to cover the cost. The cupola is going to cost another $30,000.
Yeah.
It's a nice to have thing, but it's not an essential thing.
Okay.
What we'd like to do over here at the Memorial Town Building is to create a museum space on the second floor, as well as a larger meeting space. It's got a stage. I don't know if you've been up there, but
Yep.
it's got a stage, and it was where the town council, after that building was built, it's where the town council met and had its town meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to keep the front part of the building, or actually the back part of the building where the stage is, as a community meeting place. Right now, a lot of the civic groups in town meet in our conference room downstairs, but it's small. You can probably fit 12 people comfortably. But upstairs, it'll be a bigger area. So right now, the Little League, the Land Trust, the VFW, the Pumpkin Fest Committee, and on it, there's a couple of others that meet in there, the Historic District Commission. So it's truly a community building that we're happy to make available.
That's great. My only other comment is thank you for putting all the building maintenance into your budget. You know, that's the bulk of it. So as an architect and historic preservationist myself, I'm always happy to see the efforts that the Heritage Association is putting forth into the buildings throughout town. So thank you very much and thank you and your group for doing that.
Well, thank you for your kind words. We appreciate that.
Okay, are there any other questions from Mr. Keene? Okay. Mark, how do you want it? Do you want us to vote on it by department, or do you want us just to do one vote at the end? Okay. All right, perfect. All right. Do you guys have a softball game, like, to figure out who will go next?
They flip a coin.
Good evening. David Chaudier, Fire Chief, North Smithfield Fire and Rescue. As you'll see in your packet this year, we're requesting $48,660 for protective clothing. That money is to purchase protective clothing for 3 new people that we have in the Fire Academy currently. I'm planning ahead in hopes that maybe we get additional staffing in this coming fiscal year. The hope is that will be 2. And then we still have 4 existing members that we need to purchase replacement protective clothing for them so that we stay in line with our replacement schedule so that everything doesn't expire all at one time.
Sure, great.
And the funding also includes what we do, it's a rental fee. When we send a recruit down to the fire academy, we rent protective clothing through a vendor while they're down there. That way, any damage that's done to the clothing during their training is on that vendor. When they come back, we put it in a box and we send it back. Rather than the department sinking $4,000 into protective clothing, they come back, there's holes in it, and now I've got to send it out, I got to purchase new gloves, I've got to do whatever. So for short money, it's $800 for 16 weeks. So we go that route. And then when they get to us, they get brand new clothing when they get here. So that's that. I'm happy to say over the past couple of years, we were requesting emergency generators for our 2 stations, the St. Paul Street and the Providence Pike. And with a tip from Bobby, last year, we were able to secure a grant through Rhode Island EMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So we got a $120,000 grant, and that's going to allow us to replace both generators at both stations.
That's fantastic.
So we were able to back that out of the capital budget request for this year.
How many years have you had that line item? Because I
Well,
feel like
I'll be here 6 years in July, so probably 5.
Okay. When I heard that at the council meeting, I was very pleased to hear that we don't have to, because I feel like we strongly recommended those generators every time you came to us. So I'm very happy to say, or see that that's moving forward. So
And we're excited about it too, because it's getting kind of dicey. The generators we have are old, and if something catastrophic goes wrong with them, we're not sure we would be able to get the parts for them. So we're on track with that. The next item is a replacement of one of our 2 rescue boats. Last year, the Budget Committee funded the funds for one, and that was how we put it in the budget, was one for last year, one for this year. So the hope is that we'll be able to replace that one. The boat that currently sits in that station is 25 years old. It's just had it. When we send it out for preventative maintenance for the motor and we send the boat for them to look it over, it's seen its day. We're also requesting 7 SCBA cylinders. That's our self-contained breathing apparatus. This one was something that the deputy chief and I kind of tossed around a little bit. We were going to apply for a grant for a stationary filling station for our cylinders. But what we decided to do, because the Greater Woonsocket Fire Chiefs Association secured a $600,000 grant to purchase a mobile filling apparatus, we said, rather than get involved with that, let's buy some extra cylinders, and then, if we need bottles because, we used air on training or whatever, we'll have these extras, and then somebody can go to wherever the apparatus is housed, and we can refill them from there. And obviously, if there's a fire, it will be at the fire anyhow. And that kind of is a twofold process. That's also going to fall in line with kind of like our protective clothing. We don't want all of our self-contained breathing apparatus cylinders expiring all at one time. We bought them all at one time. They have a 15-year shelf life, so now this is actually a good opportunity. We'll buy 7 this year, and then in 28 and in 29, we'll probably buy, however many more, not necessarily 7, it could be a few more than that. Way we don't have all 35 cylinders, I believe we have, expiring at one time. So that's kind of a two-phase thing. And then lastly, would be fire hose. We're looking for $5,000 replacement fire hose. We do our annual NFPA required fire hose and fire pump testing. And every year we lose a length or two. So we need to start replacing some of that to make sure that we have enough hose, obviously, to put on the truck and then to have spare as well. So that's basically what we're looking for, which would come out of capital tax dollar-wise. The rest of my items, if you see on that sheet, would be things that are slated to come out of Fund 120, which is our third-party billing for the rescue billing. You know, we're looking for $50,000 next year and $50,000 the year after to purchase new heart monitors for the rescues. The latest and greatest models will be out later on this year. And the hope is that they work through the bugs with those, and then, you know, we'll purchase one next year to get them online. And then the rest is just for replacement of apparatus down the line. Full disclosure, the deputy chief and myself took a look at this, and we're gonna have to adjust some of these numbers and how finance kind of budgets this, because the cost of replacing apparatus has just gone out of control. So these numbers won't even touch what a fire truck is gonna cost. I mean, we're looking at projections. He ran a projection for me, and we gotta replace engine number 1 in 2033. Based on what we paid for it, and based on a 5-year price increase, which that's probably not gonna be the case, we based it on 5%, that truck is gonna cost $1,086,000, and that's just for a pumper. So, we have to take a look at this, but that'll be for next year. We're in good shape right now. So, that's all I got.
All right.
I know I brought it up in the past, Chief, and it's like a beating a dead dog probably, but has anything ever come out of a lease to purchase program for fire engines?
There is not.
Okay.
There's not a lease purchase program anywhere that I've heard of, anyway. You know, what they do have to be able to save money is they'll have incentives where they'll say, let's say for a pumper, they'll say, hey, if you pay for the cabin chassis up front, we'll take off $5,000, $10,000, whatever it may be. And then the next phase may be, hey, you know, we've got the body on, before it goes to paint, we'll knock off $5,000 or whatever. And then they even get as creative to say, if you bring the check with you when you do the final walk around, you know, we'll knock off $2,000. You know, but that's all I've ever seen. I haven't seen a lease purchase type of a
Even
thing.
those numbers, when you put things in perspective, you're knocking off under 10,000 on a 1.8.
Exactly. Yeah, it's nothing.
Not even negotiable.
Exactly, exactly. Why bother? You know? Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I think what the chief is addressing is lease purchase through a manufacturer. There are lease purchase programs that communities can do,
Okay.
less the manufacturer. And what they can do is you can buy the apparatus out of your unrestricted reserve or your restricted reserve, and then you sell a lease to an investor, which would allow that money to be replenished. And over time, right, you would pay time over the investment to an investor at 1%. So that allows you to get the equipment up front. This is a finance mechanism that's available to cities and towns that some use and some don't. I won't get into detail, but when I was in West Warwick, the chief came in one day and he was all excited. And I said, why are you so excited? He said, we finally saved up enough money to buy a rescue. I almost fell out of my chair. And I said, what do you mean? And so he explained it to me. They save, like you're doing here, they save the money and then they buy the rescue. I said, you ever do a lease purchase? And, you know, your Fund 120, I don't know what the revenue is from that, but in West Warwick, they put aside 15% from their, you know, rescue reimbursement into a fund that basically funded to pay for the rescue. And when they got enough money, they would buy it. So I sat down with the chief, Joe Barris, I don't know if you know.
I do know Joe well, yep.
And we put together a plan, and I reached out to a finance director that I knew, and we put together a lease purchase program for the town of West Warwick. You could check with Joe if you still talk to him. And I told him, don't share this with any other communities, but we sat down, and for an extra 5%, they were getting 15%. For an extra 5% coming out of their rescue reimbursement, they set up a lease purchase, and they were able to update all of their equipment and have a rotating basis where they'll be able to pay for that equipment on a rotating basis through lease purchase. That's not something the chief should be responsible for, but that's a finance mechanism that communities have available to them that you could utilize.
Okay.
I will say that's a great idea, but I will say that we're very fortunate in the system that we have here, that we're able to purchase fire apparatus, rescue apparatus, and equipment out of, is this third-party rescue billing fund. We average about $50,000 a month in revenue. And then 50% of that goes to the town, we keep 50%, okay? We're averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of about $650-ish dollars a year. Like I said, 50% goes to the town. You know, we've got a substantial amount of money in there right now. A lot of that is encumbered based on these numbers for apparatus replacement. But we really don't have a problem right now purchasing these trucks. I mean, we just purchased 2 brand-new pumpers for $5 and change each, and we paid cash. I just bought a brand-new rescue for $350. We paid cash out of that, and we still have substantial funding in that account. You know, because as much as we spend, we bring it in every single month. We're like I said, we're averaging about $50K a month with all of our transports that we do. Okay. So we're very fortunate in that aspect, that it's set up that way.
Okay.
A lot of communities, that money just goes into what they call the black hole. You know? Yeah, right.
All right. Question, Dr. Plat.
Does the town's half of the rescue money get contributed toward a new apparatus?
It does not.
Does not?
It does
I
not.
thought they used to contribute some of that.
Yeah, when we purchase apparatus now, it comes solely out of our
Really?
of our portion. Yep. But if you want to suggest that, Doc, that would be great.
I believe it used to be.
That
years ago,
I wouldn't know.
that
Yeah, it's very
the town
possible.
would say, well, this really came in from your efforts.
Sure.
And we will contribute
Sure.
X number. So
Makes sense.
if I knew a councilman that I could talk to, I'll try to work it out.
Sure.
I have some numbers. I'll pass them along to you.
Yeah.
All right. If there's
Good.
no other questions for the chief?
Okay,
All right.
great.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Which one?
Good evening, Captain Russell Ridge, North Smithfield Police. I don't have too many. The chief prepared this, so hopefully I can answer all your questions. First thing he has here is to purchase 2 Motorola portable radios. Those are going to be for the 2 in the academy when they get out. That's a total of $14,721. The next 2 are year 3 of purchases, I believe, that were made a couple years ago. The Axon body camera. The fee for this year is $34,087.12. And the other one for the taser is $20,160. And I believe next year that contract's going to expire. It'll go up to about $25,000. There is one here for a DVR recording system. Essentially, this is our phone recording system is now obsolete. Can't be upgraded at all. It's not recording at certain times when you're calling. It doesn't have the capabilities to record 911 calls. I think we're like the last one in the state that has to actually call 911 for that. So the chief did go around, get some bids. The one he's looking for is $20,268.45. And then that will incur a approximately $3,400 a year for an annual fee. I do have one more. The last one's a Lefta software tracking system. This is for early intervention, officer wellness. It's $7,400. That's for the fee and the install. After that, it will go down to an annual fee of $5,400. This is essentially, if an officer is showing up late to work, you just put it in data entry. You set the parameters down where it starts picking up flags on officers, you know, if they're getting into use of forces, if they're calling out sick, maybe they're getting suspended, you know, stuff like that. You set the parameters and it flags it so that it doesn't fall through the cracks, so that we catch it and then we can take care of the issue. A lot of departments are going towards this software. On top of that, it also does other things that we also do pretty much on paper that now we can do on computer, field training software, training records, document use of forces, internal affairs investigations, field training, vehicle pursuits, all stuff we have to do through accreditation to document. This just makes it easier. Lincoln, I believe, has this. They've had good success with it. So, if anyone has any questions.
Apparently, I'm the accuracy police today. The Axon body camera on the spreadsheet is $43,087, and on that the sheet that's on the screen, it's $34,000. So I'm assuming the numbers were transposed somewhere.
The receipt I'm showing is the $34,000.
Okay, so the spreadsheet would need to be corrected from 43,087 to 34.
That's likely my error.
That's okay, I forgive you. I forgive Rich. I forgive you.
There's no need for budgeting of vehicles?
There is not. The department, within the last year, according to the chief, we've purchased 3 cruisers out of the third-party billing detail fund. And today, he closed on the COPS loan, which is, or not a loan, the grant. It's $350,000. He plans on buying 3 more SUVs and a truck with that. So we should be good for the next couple of years as far as cruisers or vehicles.
That's not going to take you very far, $300,000.
Yeah. So, yep, he's got that all lined up, and I believe he should be working on trying to get the vehicles ordered probably within the next week or 2.
I think last year when he was here, was it? We had a bad winter, he had 2 vehicles totaled.
Oh, yeah.
There was no inventory. That's why I bring it up, because we want to keep that mechanism in place.
Yeah, we've been keeping up with it, you know, with all the details. The account's really kind of getting up there, and when it gets up there, you know, we go out and purchase another one, so.
You got a 5-year plan on that one.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because it, like, Mr. Menard, you're correct, with 2022, 2023, we had a line item for $127,000 for 3 cruisers. So I would, for next year, why don't, I would say, let's start putting some monies aside in the event that the 146 details don't pan out as much.
Absolutely.
We have to
I'll let
share
them know
those
that,
with Lincoln or something, you know? Okay.
How does that work? Just question on the details. Are you privy to that? So if the area of construction is in North Smithfield, does North Smithfield have first dibs at that detail?
Yes.
And then if nobody's available, it goes out to
So
whoever else?
it would go, offices from town, our dispatchers also get a chance to do it, retirees, and then after that, we would put it out to other communities. So a lot of communities have a lot of details, so they're kind of going back and forth. I think we've been working in Burrville a couple times recently, too.
Does the town get any revenue if you bring in somebody to do the detail from a different municipality?
We do not get the.
Are you subcontracting them out, or it just gets given away at that point?
They collect all that. Their cruiser fee goes with them for that.
Question I have on a business sense.
Yep. Anything else?
All right, unless there's any other questions for the captain?
My question was going to be the vehicle purchase, because it's always been there for years after
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta.
Now it's gone.
Yeah.
We'll see it next year.
Yep.
We'll see it next year.
So,
Okay,
no.
great.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Working our way down the list then for the folks that aren't here this evening. We'll start with DPW. Mark, did Ray send anything along to you, or other than the stuff that's on here?
No.
Okay. So I had some questions for him as well. Where does, and maybe some of my other board members are more knowledgeable about this, but where does road paving fall within our budget?
Road paving's covered in the general fund. He has a line item in his operating budget for paving.
Okay.
I forgot the amount that's normally in there, $400,000, $600,000. He also has some reserve road paving money that is left over from a prior year.
Okay.
Also receiving some state funds for paving, in which we need to do a 60-40 match.
Okay.
So I think he's going to be online this year to do, between starting of the paving season, probably April through the end of the summer, close to $2 million worth of paving will be done this year.
Great. That's good to hear. That was one of my questions. Because and I was going to talk to the board about this and see what your thoughts are. Our road assessment that was done for the town by Casali Engineering was done in March of 2014. It's 10 years old. So I was going to say we should likely look to budget some amount to update that road assessment, because otherwise, you know, there could be roads that were in great condition in 2014, but with the torrential downpours and rain and every kind of the extreme weather we've been having since then, I would certainly say that we would want to budget an additional line item for a updated road assessment. Any thoughts from the board on that?
I would agree with that. I think there's also a perception concern with, like, you haven't evaluated it in 10 years sort of thing. So I know it's been referenced in certain forums in the past. I would be supportive of that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get some facts, because there is a lot of like people talking about it, and if we have a lay of the land, that would be good.
Okay.
It's also really easy to say, like, my road was on record as, I don't know what the official classifications are, like, really terrible 10 years ago, and you still haven't paved it. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of reasons to bring that back up
to
refresh
snuff.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mark, do we, or my apologies, Mr. Carullo, do we need to recommend a number that gets set aside for that updated road assessment?
If you would like to include it in this budget, yeah, you probably would. I would think, you know, to do an assessment like that, if they have the basis for it already, $20,000, $25,000, nothing more than that, I wouldn't imagine would cost.
All right. So I would like to add that item to the DPW's budget, that we have a $25,000 addition for an updated road assessment.
And our projected maps don't go out more than the 7-year, right? So you can't say, make this like an every 10-year reoccurrence.
For the assessment? I mean, that would come down to us, you know, as the planning.
Remembering.
Well, us remembering, but also, you know, we're responsible for studies done per our charter. So, I mean, we could call for, Mark, and correct me if I'm wrong, we could call for that study to be done, because it's under our, I think we're allowed to call for studies to be done in town, right? As far as utilities go?
You're authorized to do studies.
There we go.
Not to, I mean, really, the onus should be on the department that's responsible for maintenance of whatever it is you'd be studying.
Right.
And reasonably, what would happen is, in a budget for a department that's responsible for maintenance or doing a study, that there'd be a line item for consulting in that operating budget, and that consulting line item would be something that would pay for any kinds of studies, reports, assessments that would be done annually. So if you had a continual line item in a budget for consulting services, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same consulting service every year, but let's say, for example, you had a paving assessment done this year, and then 5 years down the line, you wanted to revisit that. Well, in the 5th year of your line item, you would you would engage the consultant and have them update that assessment, right?
So while we're still on the topic of consultants as well, and that's why I was asking about the Asset Management Commission. We have, I went through the town's GIS, and the town owns approximately 130 pieces of land in town. Of those 130, there's about 21 that have some sort of structure on them, whether it be the town barn, this building, the schools. And we still don't have, and I've asked for this continually, year after year, a line item for building maintenance and upkeep, and we never get it. So in order to create a maintenance plan, I would also like to see a town building assessment line item, or for consulting services. Because, you know, I'm looking at the projector right now, there's a leak, that was painted, but I don't even know if the leak's been addressed, you know, right around the projector here. And this building just opened 4 years ago. So we need to do a better job of keeping track, as evidenced with the police station. We need to do a better job at keeping track of roofs, heating and cooling, electrical panels, all these things that go into a building. And I really feel like we should have another consultant assess all the buildings to say, okay, this mechanical unit is been installed within the past 5 years. Its useful life is for 25 years, so we need to start, once that useful life is up, we need to start budgeting for that replacement. So, you know, in my past, in my line of work, we've assessed buildings just in that way, where we go through every building with a fine-tooth comb. We look at all the systems that are inside, say, you know, the side, you know, luckily we have a lot of masonry buildings. Masonry is pretty good, but you're gonna have to repoint masonry at some point in your life. Roofs are typically good for 20 to 25 years, but then after that, we need to start thinking about replacement or refurbishment of that. So there's just all these items where I don't think anybody has much of a clue of where the useful life is coming for some of these buildings. But because I've been over at the DPW, and the metal siding is starting to rust out at the bottom, and that's how you get critters in. So it's typical building maintenance, but we should have an assessment that says, here's what we need to do in the next 5-10 years, and really list the priorities so that we can address that, so we're not stuck in the situation like we are with the police station.
Yeah, I just really want to support that, because that is an issue. And I know, like, when Hallowell had to get decommissioned, you know, it's like it was said that those buildings weren't taken care of with the police station. And I've often wondered, and I've heard other people wonder, like, who is responsible for that? Is it each unit? You know, like, who is responsible for assuring that there is a plan and things are being looked at? So if there really isn't, like, a systematic approach to that, I think it's a really good idea to have the plan. Then it'll document what things look like, and then who's responsible for it.
That's a good point, because I think the only agency that would have somebody that might be somewhat on top of it would be the school department.
But the town council is
The-
put something out for facilities manager?
The council is considering to bring on a full-time or part-time facilities director. Right now, the responsibility falls within the Director of Public Works for maintenance of the buildings. And, you know, honestly, I think Ray has so much going on with
That's
his,
a big umbrella.
he's got a big, lot on his plate. And, you know, if he's gonna be doing $2 million of road paving over the, you know, April to August, who's to say where that oversight for the buildings are gonna be? So, yeah, I think, in addition, it's just a general recommendation to council that really we do need a facilities director. I don't think I've worked in a town that doesn't have one with some of my other projects, so. So I would move that we put in a line item for, when Hallowell was assessed for the buildings, it was an $80,000 line item. So if we're looking at some of the more major buildings in town, you know, maybe it's a $50,000 line item to really review the main buildings in town and get a comprehensive list of all those systems in building envelope as well. Did I say 50?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant 150.
I thought that was a little low.
Yeah, sorry. Glad you were using a pencil, Mark. Is there any?
Don't the department heads have a responsibility to come forward and say, our structures, our buildings, our facilities are failing in this regard? And then they would report that to town council. I mean, we can spend endless amount of money on consultants. And we get reports, but that doesn't mean the work gets done.
Right, but at least we begin the steps of documenting what needs to get done, so then folks understand, you know, whether it's someone sitting on the council or whether it's because right now the responsibility falls within the Director of Public Works. So that's why I was hoping he would be here tonight to answer some of our other questions as well. But it's really to support us and keep us away from some of our past failures. Because once we have that building assessment, we have that document that says, okay, we need to start budgeting for all these items that are coming down the line for our existing buildings, so that we don't have to have a situation like we're in with the police station.
It also would allow, like, for institutional knowledge, because there's turnover with the town council, and it's almost like nobody's holding that.
Right.
They're just passing it along.
And I believe it would also fall to the Asset Management Commission as well, because that's in their charge to keep an inventory of all of the town assets, buildings included. So I think it would behoove both the Asset Management Commission and whether it be the Director of Department Works or the future Facilities Director to have that document, so that way, next year, when they come to us with this document, they can say, okay, the garage doors at the DPW are ending its useful life and they're falling off their hinges, so we need to budget for this, rather than all of a sudden we need to pass, you know, a multi-million-dollar bond for building maintenance. And I know it can be done in a couple different ways, addressing it through either budget or bonding. You know, I had before Mr. Carullo was on board, I had a lengthy conversation with our previous planner, Mr. Kravitz, and he and I had said that, you know, you could go in various ways, but at least now, if we have this full building assessment, we would know what we're going to be paying for.
All we can do is pass it on to the council, and it's in their hands.
Exactly. But at this point, I would strongly recommend that they do both the building assessment and the road assessment, as we've been discussing. That's me on my soapbox. I'm going to be done for now. So are there any other comments for the DPW line items? Okay. So then we move down to the school department. I do want to comment that the high school library renovations and furniture upgrades, my wife attended a dance to the high school with my 8-year-old son, and my wife and I are graduates of the high school, and she said that the same furniture was in there when she and I were there. I'm not going to tell you what year I graduated.
It was really good quality.
But I'm going to say it was more than 20 years ago, which really hurts to say. So I'm pleased to see that as a line item in here. And then I did have a question for the superintendent as well for the elementary school parking lot resurfacing. Because of my son being an attendee at the elementary school, I thought they repaved a good chunk of the elementary school parking lot over last summer, because when I was dropping Andy off at Camp Phoenix, there was a whole section that was cordoned off for repaving. So I don't know if that was a top coat or resealing, or, I just had a question if it was just done or not. So that was the only other line item that I had. Did anybody else have any comments? Okay, easy enough. Then we go down to North Smithfield Little League. Mark, was there any reason why NS Express, the Soccer Association, and any other North Smithfield Northman Hoops, or any other groups didn't submit something?
I think the basis of this was that we did not reach out to North Smithfield Little League.
Okay.
They actually reached out to DPW and asked if it was okay if they would submit something. The director asked me, I said, I'll accept it if they submit it. So
Okay.
I think it was them being proactive as
Sure.
opposed to being reactive.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what conversations take place between Parks and Rec or the DPW director in these different
Okay.
leagues, but I know that the North Smithfield Little League was being proactive in trying to present something for consideration.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Any comments? Okay.
Send it on.
Because I've been saying something for everybody, I'm going to say one last thing. My son does fall ball and spring baseball. And for fall ball, we do travel to other towns and communities, and those fields are nice. And I've talked with the folks at North Smithfield Little League, and they are endeavoring to create that level that's being provided at some of our neighboring towns here. So I'm glad to see that they've put that forward as well.
We did one of the fields, I don't know the difference between the fields, I'm not a baseball person. We just redid one of the fields at the high school.
The high school is responsible for the fields up at the high school property. Little League is Pacheco. Yeah. So this would solely be Pacheco.
And didn't Frank have something in his then?
He does it.
He has irrigation at Pacheco Park.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Anything else for anybody?
Do we have to approve the meeting schedule, or that's,
Well, we gotta make a motion on this.
well,
Jumping ahead.
send it on, send it on.
All right.
It's like way past his bedtime now.
So-
You've got that right.
I'll look for a motion to approve and recommend the budget as reviewed and amended. I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Review and approval of 2022 meeting schedule. This continues our it says 2022.
Apparently I'm on a roll tonight.
You are knocking them out right now. All right, so can we appropriately vote on it because it says 2022? Okay. Just checking. So we're still maintaining the second and fourth Thursday of every month, with the exception of Thanksgiving, November? Okay. Here, let me start off by saying this. Is there any objection? Okay.
The second page is almost.
I just want to clarify, though, it's usually one or the other, right? Like, it's not typical that we would meet both of those.
It's usually one or the other,
Yeah.
but if Mark and Bobby are getting a lot of applications, then
Yeah.
to divvy some things up and spread them out, then yeah, we would.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other times where we would have like
Workshop.
a workshop, so if we're updating comprehensive plan or zoning amendments.
The planning and zoning stuff, we'll see how that schedule shakes out, but
Okay.
we definitely wanted to reserve those dates for
Okay.
Will our
that.
schedule, will our calendar, not a schedule, will our calendar bulk up with now our new responsibilities?
So we're lucky enough that there aren't a lot of projects coming in, so that's gonna give us time to work on updating the zoning and the regulations, but any new projects that are going to be coming in
They have a new time.
are going to be under the new statute, and we're gonna have to address those as the statute requires.
Yeah,
So,
that put us.
what you
to-
saw tonight, you're gonna get a lot more of that. The zoning board, their workload is gonna tail off, and yours is gonna pick up.
Will we have the solicitor at every one of those type of meetings?
That would be the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we continue it to a date certain.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll look for a motion to accept the 2024 meeting schedule. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Dr. Benoit, would you like us to table item number 12, the election of officers, since our full board is not here this evening?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
We have that tabled then for our next meeting. There's no administrative subdivisions, so who's going to make the motion first for adjournment?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everybody.